down, these things are usually rows, aisles of a guy sawing out of the back of his car and this sort of thing. You know, it's like any other swap meet. The little guy comes and dumps his junk. And I was walking down one of the rows, and I saw an orgone box sitting on the ground. I looked at it. Is this really an orgone box? I thought, really? So I said to the guy, how much you want for this thing? And he said, give me $2 for it. So I say, well, anything else here come with it? He pointed to about 5 pieces of electronic equipment from the 30s and said, yeah, those came with it. And what do you want for all of it? Give me $20 for the whole mess. So I gave him the $20 and packed it all in my car. And I said, well, where did this come from? And I said, where does it come from? Is there any more of it? I'd like to buy more of this if you can find more of it. He says, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you where it came from. He told me of a used furniture dealer south of Rangeley that he got it out of one of the back buildings in the used furniture place. This was a Saturday. About 1 o'clock I got this out of the fella. And I called up the used furniture dealer. He was still open and he'll wait for me. So I made it up to Rangeley very fast that afternoon.
I guess so.
And I introduced myself, so I was a fella talking on the phone, and they're saying you got a pile of electronic junk up here. He says, yeah, the whole back building full of it. So he takes me out there and shows me this whole small building, about 20 by 30 feet, just filled with this stuff. So I say to the fella, how much? And he tells me a figure, very cheap. So I write him a check. And I load up my van with the first load and bring it home. Second time I went up there, I said to myself, where'd this all come from? He says, no secret, he'll tell me. He said, up in Rangeley, there was a house filled with this stuff. The attic was filled, the basement was filled with this stuff. But to continue the story, towards the end, I found over in the back corner a stack of notebooks about that tall. They turned out to be Wilhelm Reich notebooks. And of course, I brought them home. The story I've been able to piece together, talking with the used furniture dealer, is that apparently Mr. Reich, in the 50s, when he was in trouble, he knew he was in trouble. He couldn't tell the court, the judge, what he was doing because it was secret. It was all classified. He knew he was going to end up in jail. So apparently he took a lot of the secret stuff and he considered to be proprietary and put it in the house that was leased to his assistant. He didn't own it. So the government didn't know of it.
Right.
And when he died, this house stayed fallow for about 15 years. And then whoever owned it reverted back to the owner, and they wanted to refurbish the house, so they called this used furniture dealer in and said, clean the house out.
Okay.
And this guy carted all this stuff back.
Curiosities.
Yeah.
Are you at liberty to say what kind of devices you found?
Well, there was about a dozen orgone accumulators, from small ones to something you consider like the size of refrigerators. He had electronic equipment. I still don't know what it is. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay. Were there any devices attached to the orgone accumulators, electronic devices?
There was connectors on them, but I haven't found anything that fits those connectors in the file.
Anything on the orgone motor?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe some of the devices, some of the electronic devices were for the orgone motor, I don't know. See, Reich in the later years went heavily into electronics. He was experimenting with door busting for, the government and other people, for door busting the atmosphere and all this kind of stuff, which we'll go into a little bit.
Yeah.
And he went very heavily into electronics.
Okay.
This, of course, is common knowledge. And he went into electronics. Well, he himself knew nothing of it. I guess he learned some.
How was this correlating to Nikola Tesla now, known as Nikola Turbo?
Tesla was working mostly in communications equipment.
Okay.
This RCA communications, what were they interested in? Communications equipment. Well, of course, at that same time, Reich was trying to get the RCA group to design an orgone receiver.
Yes.
And Tesla was involved in that. Whether he ever got it, I don't know. Although the big RCA receivers I have here, there were sections of those receivers up in the Ranger, in that house. There were sections of them.
Was there
but
any?
They were highly modified.
Yes. Was there any known communications between the two? Did they ever communicate directly?
The communications I know of was letters from a particular engineer in RCA to Reich. I don't know if there was any direct communication between Tesla and Reich. Reich may have went to RCA because they had Tesla in their employ. I don't know.
I see. Okay. Then there was, of course, that interesting bit of folklore concerning Tesla's supposed death in the 40s, and how he was secreted to London.
Yeah, we believe it was London.
Okay. And he died when? In the 50s? At some point?
Late 50s, early 60s.
Now, this was done ostensibly because he was working on etheric physics for them?
I don't know what he was working on. He was working for Stanley Electric and RCA Limited.
Okay.
And you see me split between the two companies. Of course, this is very soft evidence we have for this. Very soft.
Right.
We're still looking for more proof of it, if any.
Okay. Well, some of the proof could be inferred. The fact that his body was quote-unquote discovered by a maid. No one else saw the body. Secondly,
sealed casket.
Sealed casket.
Yep.
Secondly, the fact that his
Death
longevity.
certificates can be faked. It can be faked.
Yes, absolutely. The longevity factor. I mean, his family line seemed to live a very long time.
Right.
Okay, let's get back to Wilhelm Reich now and door busting electronically. Maybe you can fill us in.
In the late 40s, early to late 40s, Reich had 2 or 3 laboratories around the country. He had one up in Maine, he had one somewhere in Arizona, and he had one in Los Angeles. And these were essentially weather laboratories. He's gotten very heavily into orgone, building up accumulators and door busting, the orgone motor, this sort of thing. What you're referring to that I know of is the basis of one of my products I'm putting out from Preston Space-Time Laboratories. Mr. Reich contacted the government in about 47, 48, we're not sure when, maybe 46 even, and told them, hey, I got a little device that if you send it up through the atmosphere, it will take the violence out of the storm. Of course, the government's interested, so they tell them, send the prototype out to Brookhaven National Laboratories up in New York, which is right up, maybe 10 miles that way. Okay. This is as per a retired PhD from Brookhaven that worked on the project, this story. So they get this little cardboard box, and they send it up on a meteorological balloon. And they wait for a thunderstorm to be heading towards, and they send it up, and the thunderstorm splits and goes around them. They do this a number of times, and they realize, yes, he's got something. The thought they developed eventually, from what I understand, is they got the idea if they send enough of these things up and punched enough holes in the weather front that they could actually dissolve the weather front. So then a device known as a radiosonde changed its characteristics. It became a doorbuster. Okay. The original AMT-2 radiosondes were the Wilhelm Reich transmitter with its 2 sensors. He developed a sensor, an antenna, a little antenna, that picked up the orgone energy in phase, and he developed another one that picked up the door energy out of phase. All these little boxes did is they sequentially connected the orgone and the door sensors in a sequence. The idea being when the door sensor was connected, it reduced the door components, and then when the orgone sensor was connected, it built up the orgone component to replace the door component. And then he had another position of input, another input to the transmitter to clear the transmitter. He had a nice little transmitter.
This was now an electronic version
of the door buster.
Of the cloud buster or the DOR buster,
right.
Which required water grounds.
This didn't require a ground.
Now, where did this door go? In other words, did it go into the vacuum? Did it sink into the 0 point?
We're not speculating.
Right.
It was probably pulled into the vacuum of the transmitter and dissipated.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't know for sure whether it was or not.
Okay.
But it probably was.
That's pretty mysterious.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm willing to admit I don't fully understand how the system works.
Okay. Now, the government for years concealed this fact.
Oh, yeah.
They just called it radio sondes.
They said it was a package that gathered information about the weather and transmitted it back to the Earth. There's a number of peculiar things here. First of all, they had sent hundreds of these things in the air every day, from the ships at sea, airports, weather centers, whatever you want to put it.
Yes.
And these things had a radio range of maybe 100 miles, maybe. They didn't go far. They only transmitted about a half a watt of radio power, you know, Hertzian power to call it in grid sciences. Now, I have seen radio sonde transmitters all over the surplus market. In the 60s, those things, you could get them anywhere. You walk down the old Canal Street or Portland Street in Manhattan, you get barrels of radio sondes out in front of these stores. I have never, ever seen a radio sonde receiver, known as a radio sonde receptor. I've never seen one.
Curious.
And I've also, all my friends that are in the collecting business, I only know one who has ever seen a receiver. What does that tell us?
Very strikingly.
If they had used these things all over the place, what did they receive them on? These things should be as common as the BC-348 Army receiver was, I mean the Army aircraft receiver, or the little ARC-5 boxes. They should have been as common as those. They should have been everywhere. But no. And another interesting thing, you talk to the companies that got contracts. The government awarded contracts to build radio sonde receivers. Only thing is, 3-4 months after they awarded the contracts, they pulled them.
Okay. Curious again.
Servo Corporation built them. Universal Manufacturing is going to build them.
Okay.
All these small companies were bid on these radio sonde projects.
Would you tell us a little about the characteristics of the output of the radio sonde?
Well, let's continue more on security.
Oh, fine.
Because we're not finished with the security yet.
Oh, okay.
All right, another thing that they did, the main tube that's in the transmitter, the carrier oscillator, they listed the number of the tube in the RCA tube manual, but they told you in the tube manual the thing only lasts a few hours. Curious. I've had radio sonde tubes running here for 2 hours, 2,000 hours or more. That was another way to keep people from using the tubes. A hand would not build something with a tube that only lasts a few hours. Now, the transmitter essentially is a pulse modulated transmitter. It's a CW oscillator where it's pulsed off. As the tube oscillates, the stores in the etheric component when it's pulsed off, the etheric component is pushed out to the antenna. This is about as much as I understand on how the thing works. I'm willing to admit, although I'm making a product with it, the basic transmitter I don't fully understand. I know how to replicate it, but that's about it. I don't understand why they did some of it. And that's this right here. is a copy from the radio song, this white bottle. This actually is out of a radio song.